In this video, I'm going to show you an assortment of my colonial American currency. To start, we're going to go and show you my North Carolina colonial note. And I actually have three different North Carolina notes from 1754. And this one, if you notice, it's a 30 shilling denomination. It's a proclamation money according to an Act of Assembly on the 9th of March 1754. Now, as you can see, it was proclamation money. It was declared to be money in the amount of 30 shillings. It was not backed by any gold or silver or other tangible asset. And a lot of money at the time was one-sided. So as you can see, people would write things on the back. Sometimes you would actually sign the note when you spent it to keep track of how it moved around to ensure that you don't get stuck with a counterfeit current note. Now next, I'm going to show you my 10-pound bill from the Colony of New York, and this one is dated 1758. And as you can notice, it has a colonist here, an Indian, a crown, the English crown, so it's a very interesting vignette on that bill. And this is how these notes were. Now, one thing about this bill, it's also barren on the back. There is no design or anything, but unlike the North Carolina note, nothing is written on the back of it. Now, here is a 20 shilling note from the Colony of Delaware from 1759. And this, it doesn't look that impressive, but it's a really nice note. And let me show you why when you see the reverse. And you probably want me to turn it around. Here it has 20 shillings. Here it says to counterfeit is death. And they used to take counterfeiting very seriously back then because they were trying to get paper money accepted back in colonial times. But what's interesting is it's printed by Ben Franklin and David Hall. Now, Ben Franklin, everyone knows, but David Hall went on to print some of the Continental Currency, which you will see in a moment. But Ben Franklin suggested using leaf designs on the notes because it was hard for a counterfeiter to replicate. So that's when they started using methods of security to foil counterfeiters. Oops. Oh, nope. Okay, this note is actually, I don't know if it's blurry because I have another bill below it, but it's a 1 shilling note under the reign of King George III, dated the 3rd day of April, Anno Domini, in 1772. And what's interesting about this note is the fact that it's signed by Adam Hubley, who was a general or colonel. He was a prominent military commander during the American Revolution. So sometimes you can collect early colonial notes for the signatures. You have some where people who signed the Declaration of Independence also signed the money, so those would cost a little more, but it's fun collecting signatures as well as the actual currency. Now here is a nice problem-free note. Okay, 40 shillings, also under the reign of King George III, dated in Philadelphia on the 20th day of July, 1775. So these are kind of interesting, how they would also use the old fonts and stuff. Now here I have two different bills. Both are 4 pences. This one is from 1776, and that is from 1777. Now this one, as you can see, has a little water damage. And then this one, the paper is actually thicker. But I'm going to show you something interesting when I flip this note over. One reason why the paper is different is because the one on the right was printed by Hall and Sellers, who also printed Continental Currency, and the one in the left was printed by John Dunlap. Now, here you have all these fibers, which are security fibers to foil counterfeiters, and there are also some mica flakes embedded in the paper as another deterrent. Other interesting notes are these New York City waterwork notes, and this is an 8 shilling bill from that time period. These are very collectible and you don't see them that often, but they're kind of interesting because it says waterworks. I'm not sure if it was for New York City's water supply or what, and these are from 1776. This is what the reverse of that note looks like. Here we have a 15 shilling bill from the Colony of New Jersey. And some of these New Jersey notes you can find signed by someone like John Hart, who also signed the Declaration. I do not have one of these. And also, if you shine it to the light, it says watermarked New Jersey on it. So I'm going to let me stop the camera and see if I can demonstrate in the light for you. So here you can see where it says New Jersey on the watermark. Now the reverse of this note is showing a leaf design as popularized by Ben Franklin, and it also says to counterfeit is death. And it says Burlington in New Jersey, printed by Isaac Collins in 1776. Now, Maryland was interesting in the fact that they were quick to adopt dollars as their denomination. As you can see, some of those notes were still using shillings in the around 1775, 1776. And here it's dated 1774. And what's interesting is Maryland actually made their currency redeemable in gold or silver. So some of the Maryland colonial currency was actually backed by tangible assets. And let me show you the reverse of this. They also employed intricate leaf designs to foil counterfeiters. They also issued currency in really interesting denominations. This note, even though it's in terrible condition, it says 1/9 of a dollar. So in Maryland, you could actually spend denominations as low as 1/9 of a dollar in paper. It's a very interesting and unusual denomination from the time period. Now, Virginia was kind of interesting. Because of the fiat money that circulated around back then, they wanted to change the face of their currency, hoping people would accept the new design. And the Virginia James River Bank had printed all this paper back in England, and they were not granted a charter to operate in the Virginia colony. So the colony of Virginia actually bought the paper and issued these as notes of the colony of Virginia. And in doing so, they changed the design of their currency, hoping people would accept them. Now we get to Continental Currency. And this is an interesting one because the note was torn in half and then stitched back together. The Continental notes were a little thicker on the paper, so that was kind of interesting. And they were also issued in denominations of dollars in an attempt to be different from the English standard of currency, the shilling and the pound. But like the colony of, let me turn it on its side so you guys can see it in the frame of the camera. Like the colony of Maryland, which had unusual denominations. Continental currency came in denominations as low as 1/3 of a dollar, and even lower. You've got the 13 colonies in the chain link, that was suggested by Ben Franklin. And the Continental Currency was printed by Hall and Sellers in Philadelphia, 1776. Here is one note showing the obverse, and here is another note showing the reverse. Here is a 1/6 of a dollar Continental note. And you won't be able to find one in this condition for that price that easily these days. I bought that over a decade ago. Here is one of the later Continental currencies issued in 1779. And this is a $55 note. And it's also watermarked. This watermark may be a little easier to see if I raise it. Don't know if you guys can see it still, but there is a watermark on this paper as well. And they also used the leaf design on the back. This is the first Continental note I ever bought. It is an unsigned remainder note. Basically, it was printed, but never issued. It's one of the later notes from 1779, and it's a $60 bill. Here's the reverse of that one. Going later in time, we have North Carolina Colonial over here, which is in denominations of $20. And this note is from 1778. So as you can see, they started using dollars in the late 70s, even before the end of the American Revolution. But with the demise of the Continental currency and the fate of it, some colonies or early states went back to using shillings temporarily. Like here is a Rhode Island note from 1786 in denominations of shillings, and this note is a 10-shilling note. And these are some of the early American currency from the 1700s.